Today we're watching Link's Camelli again with the video, Is Elitism okay? And that's actually a very, very relevant question still, because there's so much disparity between this toxic casualism and toxic elitism, and where the communities kind of collide. And I think the best way of achieving peace and achieving acceptance would be if they would understand each other and maybe just don't look at each other in a bad way, just with more respect. But yeah, let's see what Lynx is offering as the solution here, or maybe he doesn't have one. I think he will. It's Lynx. He always tries to find solutions for problems, right? So let's go.
Hey everyone, I'm Lynx Camelli and I'm a rank 1 tank. What is your reaction when I say that? Does it make you think I'm someone that has credibility and is worth listening to? Or does it make you think I'm an elitist that wants to brag about how good I am? Am I arrogant, or am I building context for what I'm about to say? There is no correct answer. The important factor, however, is intention.
There is one. There's a correct answer. He wants to brag about this, he wants to highlight his content, and he wants to underline his credibility with his achievement. Yeah, it's as simple as it is. Like, if you put this into a thumbnail, into a title, like I did with my rotation videos, for example, when I just claim to have reached certain values and numbers and DPS results, then I put this into the title because I achieved that. And that's basically the same reason why he put it into the title, to get clicks, to get attention. And yeah, that's definitely something you have to acknowledge. It's not a bad thing, naturally. That's the only thing I can tell you. You are bragging about this. You are calling for attention a bit, especially on YouTube. Sometimes you have to. You always have to.
When I made my rank 1 tanking guide, I was scared people weren't going to listen to me because I wasn't an established YouTuber. I received quite a few comments claiming I was arrogant, or that nobody cared about my achievements if my points were good. And while they're not exactly wrong, I found it odd that by simply stating my achievements, I was perceived as braggadocious. In this video, I want to tackle a few topics. Parsing and the elitist stigma around it, if it's okay to encourage players to improve, and the difference between elitism versus casualism. I made that word up. Let's get into it. When I say casualism, I don't specifically mean being a casual player. Similar to how being an elite player doesn't mean you're an elitist, being a casual player doesn't make you a casualist. Throughout my very short history of being a YouTuber, I've made a few videos on the topic of parsing, and I refer to FF logs and percentiles extremely often in my videos. This has led to some viewers leaving comments expressing their dissatisfaction with how parsing in FF logs has influenced the game. To summarize and generalize their arguments, they believe DPS only matters to a certain point, and anything over the requirement to clear a fight is irrelevant. They also believe parsing breeds a toxic and elitist community, and that since the game isn't inherently competitive, there is no reason to push people to constantly go faster and DPS harder. While I don't agree with most of their arguments, it's important that we define what elitism is. Is elitism telling your healer to DPS? No. Is elitism telling your tank to pick up the pace and pull more mobs? No. Is elitism telling someone that they are doing their rotation wrong or some aspect of their play incorrectly and then giving them the information to improve? Absolutely not. Elitism is believing that you are better than others and treating them badly or being rude because you believe you are above them.
Yes.
This brings us to a term I'd like to call casualism. Believing that external advice and improvement are inherently toxic, and disregarding anyone's opinion on your performance. I'm sure we've all seen the players that when given any form of criticism or instruction to play better, immediately respond with, "You do your job and I'll do mine." How is this any different from elitism? If elitism is believing that you are better than others and you treat them poorly because you believe they are below you, then casualism is believing that you don't need their advice and they should stick to themselves and you'll do whatever you want.
That's on point. That's really on point, because that basically means, even though they are both on the exact opposite side of the scale, they are toxic in the exact same way. And that's a crazy good assumption here, and crazy good acknowledgement. They are completely on the different side of the scale, but they're dealing with the other part of the scale in the same exact identical toxic way. And yeah, at least on that way, they're kind of in the same playing field, right?
Carry the same connotation, believing you know all the answers and don't need outside information. This brings us back to parsing in the meta of Final Fantasy XIV. In this game, DPS is king. Damage is more important than tanking and more important than healing. Every class, regardless of role, is expected to output damage in today's raiding mentality. If you go into a raid as a healer and you aren't DPSing, more often than not people will look at you as a weaker player. Let's address believing that the bare minimum is all that's required. Allow me to compare this to another game, CSGO. In Counter-Strike there are ranks, ranging from silver to gold to master guardian and onwards. If we follow the line of thinking that the bare minimum is all that's required and insert it into CSGO, then as long as you have the skill set to win games at silver 1, the lowest rank, you are performing well, right? You're winning, albeit against weaker players, but the victory screen still shows up. Let's call E5S, Ramu Savage, silver 1. As long as you are doing just enough to clear Ramu, then you're doing well, right? The boss dies and you get loot. But as we all know, there is more than one boss in a raid tier, and the DPS requirements are always going up. This is similar to moving up in ranks in Counter-Strike. As you progress from silver to gold nova, you are expected to perform better and have an increased knowledge about the game. Similarly, moving from Ramu to Ifrit and Garuda requires you to play better and perform more damage. The bare minimum requirement is always increasing, and therefore the game is encouraging you to improve. This continues to the final fight of a raid tier. In this tier, that's Shiva. Shiva's DPS check is still a thing in Party Finder groups even after all these weeks and gear acquired. For my hardcore raiders out there, yes, I understand that in a static the DPS checks are a bit of a joke, but you have to understand that there are more players raiding without a static than those that are raiding with a static. So with that being said, I think we can agree that the idea of the bare minimum requirement for Ramu is not the same as the bare minimum requirement for Shiva. Within the 4 bosses of a raid tier, there is a need for improvement. Perhaps you have the skill to clear the first 2 fights, but do not have the skill to clear the 3rd and 4th. That means you need to improve. This is where FF logs and damage rankings come in. FF logs is the tool we use to compare ourselves to other players and to learn fights through looking at specific timings and when we should be using our cooldowns, etc. To those of you that believe FF logs and comparison breed a toxic and negative community, I'd argue that there will always be a section of the community that is toxic and negative. If they weren't flaming people for FF logs and DPS, then it'd be something else.
Yes.
Their movement, their glamour, whatever. There are rude people in the world, and they are gonna be rude. FF logs by itself does not breed a toxic environment, but instead an informed community that can clearly see what is and isn't optimal. We know what is correct and what isn't. We know when you're playing badly and have the information to help you improve as a player. This trickles down into the leveling content and more casual content since the players at the top end that are clearing Savage raids know the requirements. And I'd put money on the idea that most high-end players actually want to help others and get satisfaction from helping players. Let me make it abundantly clear. There are toxic players at the top end of Final Fantasy. Do not for 1 second believe that I am saying toxicity doesn't exist. Yes, of course it's real, and some people will flame you and be incredibly rude over mistakes or your gameplay. But this doesn't take away from the fact that there are also people out there who want to help. The issue with the Final Fantasy XIV community is we have so many players unwilling to learn or take criticism or implement feedback because they see everyone who offers advice as elitist and toxic. This couldn't be further from the truth. If I see a paladin using their single target combo when there are 5 mobs around them and I type "can you AoE please," and they respond with "don't tell me how to play," who is the toxic one here? I was offering advice to improve their play and increase performance while they shut me down and stubbornly stick to their suboptimal way to play.
Okay, that's actually one of the more difficult situations there, because when you would interpret this in a isolated case, even there, I feel like this could be more leaning towards an interpretation on the toxic side of things. I would be super careful, and I would take all of this to another level. I would really just try to formulate a full sentence and tell something like, hey, you know, there are many mobs out there, and at least when you're having 3 or more mobs, you should definitely use your AoE stuff. That's more powerful. Just try it out. Something like that. Yes, it takes you an extra mile. Yeah, you have to do some more extra typing. You have to be more careful in what you're saying. But I would always do that. It doesn't hurt you to provide this extra explanation to get rid of miscommunication and some people getting annoyed by interpreting your ideas and your helpful assistance here into something that will hurt them, or that into something that will derive them from their playing style. And yeah, of course, the answer is also toxic maybe, but you know how it is. People can get hurt very quickly, and to avoid that, just be super careful on top of that. Of course, on the other side, people should grow a thicker skin. I always claim that this is one of the most important things you should have in an MMO environment, that you don't take everything personally and be upset so quickly because somebody said something you could interpret as a critique to you or criticism to you. Yeah, that's just the natural cycle there in MMOs. You can't avoid that, and sometimes it's meant in that way, but other times, maybe 90% of other cases, it's not. So grow a thick skin, don't take everything personal. If there's point for an argument and people are trying to pull this off and want to argue with you, go for it. Also very, very entertaining content coming out from discussion, right? So
remember that this is a team game, in that if you play poorly, you're taking more time to clear dungeons or raids. You're actually wasting more than your own time. You're wasting the other people in that party's time, and therefore you playing the specific way that you want to might affect other players in a way that they're not happy with. My point here is that Final Fantasy XIV has an extremely negative stigma towards improvement and advice, and we need to fix it. People aren't giving you advice because they think you suck, it's because they want to help. People aren't encouraging you to pull more mobs and tank faster because they think you're bad, it's because they want to help. People aren't telling you to DPS more as a healer because they hate you, it's because they want to help. You don't have to like someone to agree with their points. I'm not saying everyone that points out your mistakes should be your best friend, but definitely if what they're saying is true, then reflect on it and take the criticism or improvements they suggested and implement it into your play. When you improve, you not only help yourself, but you help everyone in the party as well. You don't have to be a top parsing rank 1 player putting in 60 hours a week to improve. Any improvement is still improvement, no matter how big or small. And it's my belief that you should want to improve. Yes, I understand we play video games to escape from the real world, and some of you out there don't want to be pressured into caring so heavily about being optimal and are just looking to relax and play FF for fun. The thing is, you can still do that while taking feedback and implementing performance increases into your gameplay. So to answer the question in the title, is elitism okay? Well, obviously not. But I hope with what I said here today, you can understand that the common forms of criticism people claim as elitist really aren't that elitist. Most people just want to help, and they want to offer advice that helps them to be a better player, and it's up to you to decide if you will be stubborn and have a toxic casualist mindset, or implement advice in whatever form you can. Yes, there are toxic elitist people which are a problem, but assuming every person that gives you advice is one of them is just as much of a problem. That's all I've got for you today, friends. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with my content, and check out my Patreon if you want to support me further. Follow me on Twitch for live streams, Twitter for tweets, and join my Discord to engage.
Okay, yeah, he hasn't gotten any content out recently, so we're still hoping that he will return at some point. But yeah, he makes some really, really solid points here. He always does, by the way. I think how much some people dislike Lynx, or might dislike Lynx, because he has a WoW background and is kind of part of the hardcore players department and community. He makes some valid points and he nails them. That's the specialty about Lynx. He nails the topic. And I can basically only agree here. The only thing that we have to talk about is this being optimal thing. I think that's the only thing where I would disagree. I had a discussion with another summoner in Eden 2 Savage, where he claimed that my rotation was wrong because I was performing my stubborn 5.1 rotation. Then I thought about, hey, of course, it's not optimal, but it's working out insanely close to the optimal. Like, I'm just basically dropping 200 or 300 potency over my whole 2-minute cycle, and that's just a matter of if you crit or not. So you are doing something that is not optimal, but it's so close that it doesn't matter at all for the result. And here's where I really want to defend people that might just take, or just don't want to take your advice to put into their gameplay, because sometimes it's just not necessary. For example, if you're a summoner right now and you're pushing out 8k DPS, if you do that and you're just doing Savage content, and you have a kind of different rotation than others have, which is kind of difficult on the summoner actually, but if that's the case and somebody comes in and, hey, there's 2 or 3 things you should try to change and improve because it's holding us back, that's a problem, because it's not holding us back. If I pull my weight and put out the damage that's so close to the optimum, I don't have to improve. You have to start with all the other people that are failing to mechanics, that are kind of unfocused, and you have some tries and where some wipes are being caused by people not being focused. They have to improve in the first place, because that's much more of a DPS loss in total than you with the suboptimal rotation. I hope you get the point. If I have the suboptimal rotation, but it pushes out 95% of my optimal DPS performance all the time, consistently, every fight, I'm actually performing very, very nicely. Because whatever might lead to this, the comfort that this rotation that I'm choosing gives me, or the confidence to be focused on the boss, this is way more important, a good thing to have, than people trying their last piece of mind to get their optimal rotation done properly and get the last quench of uptime, but they are failing so many times. The try-hard, sweating melee jobs that try to get the last piece of uptime, and then they get cleaved by the boss and die. And you're like, dude, you could just have gone away there. It's fine. Your damage is good. You know how your rotation works. You dealt a lot of damage before that phase. Just take that one GCD off. It's fine. We can take it. We will survive. And that's the thing. And that's, I think, where I have to disagree with the hardcore mentality of Lynx in that point. As long as you're pulling your weight and don't do big mistakes like we did on the example with there are 5 mobs and you're pushing out your single target rotation. That's wrong. That's straight wrong and something you should correct. Of course. But if there's just 1 or 2 skills that you don't perform in the right optimal order, or maybe that are not falling under the certain buff window or your buff duration of the potion, whatever, it doesn't mean the end of the world, really. If that comes at the same time and the same player with a perfect play and a perfect dodge of all mechanics, perfect performance in these mechanics and not failing one single time, I would always choose that and prefer that over one that is constantly trying to get the best powers, the best DPS out there, but 50% of the times they're dying because they are too greedy. But yeah, other than that, the point of this video, and I think the essence here, most of the times, and I agree with him, most of the times it's really meant to help and not meant to correct somebody and to stand over them in a way that, hey, I'm better than you. You have to play in a way that I would say 80% of the times they just want to help you. But on the other hand, my advice for those people that want to help is take that extra time and effort to make this as clear as possible that you're meaning this in a helpful way and not trying to devaluate the effort and the performance and the skill of other players. You just want them to become a better player, and with all your good intention, not in a bad way. And then just type these extra 2-3 words like, hey, we have 5 enemies around. I would suggest you to play with your AoE rotation. It's making your damage way stronger, my friend. Just put my friend back there and you're good to go. I think there are some tricks how you can avoid toxicity with ease. Just put some very, very nice words in there, like, hey, my good dude, or hey, my friend. Try to be Urianger. Try to form a sentence with Urianger in your mind.
Mine milkshake bringeth all yon gentlefolk to mine yard, and lo, they reply, 'tis better than thine.
And then nothing can happen badly there. You're not my friend, buddy. Yeah, of course. If people want to be toxic, they will always be toxic. You can't do something against it. You can't form and articulate a sentence that's completely immune to toxicity and people that just want to read the worst out of your helpful advice. There's no way to deal with it. But apart from that, like I said, it grants you a good chance that it avoids most conflict most of the times. If you just take that extra effort and time to articulate that sentence with the best and most polite manners that you can offer. I think context is extremely important as well. Tone of voice, situation, wording, public or private, if the party's actually struggling or someone is just nitpicking, etc. Well said, Tilly. Well said. Exactly. That's the most crucial context that you can find. If you're already wiping or dying many times and you're just telling one person in particular some advice, they could interpret that as, hey, I am the reason why we're wiping, and I feel bad about this right now. And once people feel bad, they take this to their heart, take it personally. If you take stuff personally, you're always tending more to be defensive. Very good video from Lynx, again. I hope he will come back at some point. I know that every time we reacted or we watched some of his content right now, recently, there were always people claiming or talking in the comment section like, hey, Lynx, when does Lynx come back? And please come back, Lynx, your content is missed. And I think that's the case. I think that's the case. We need more hardcore players that are able to really articulate their thoughts and try to find out some issues of the community, of the game, of developers, whatever, and be super honest about that. Even if he is kind of clickbaity at some points, it's fine. It doesn't hurt us, right? If Lynx, for example, produces a clickbait video and has success with it, who's getting hurt? Nobody's getting hurt. You don't have to click the video. I don't get this in general, like on all YouTube comments when people are, oh, dude, you're using so much clickbait. Yeah, don't click it. If your giga brain analyzed that it's clickbait, why have you clicked it and also put in a comment there that's also pushing the algorithm even further? Yeah, maybe just not click it and that it's good.